Transport in the cities, the topic which is always, I would say, the most hot that might appear in the media, in our private discussions. We love to talk about the aspects like, hey, I was stuck in a traffic jam, there's no parking places, or how can I get there and there? Besides the fact that it's a never-ending story, the question is how, which areas we can define, and finally, why smart mobility is the area of smart cities that right now has the biggest budgets that are spent on that, and from the other side brings the biggest attempt in media and also in the academia part. So what we can count as these parts of the transportation which are worth mentioning. We have hundreds of different definitions how the transport should be divided. I'll try to present you the one which is the most basic one, but from the other side represents the all areas that should be covered in here. So generally we can divide transport into three parts. Public sector, so public transportation, individual transportation, and about the third one I will tell you about this in a second. Thinking about public transportation, the most well-known, it's everything about buses, trams, trains, and metro, which runs in the cities. Next, we have all individual sources of transportation. First, cars, and all the challenges that we have with them. But we should think about pedestrians, we should think about bicycles, electric scooters, which are in use more and more often these days. And finally, we have the third source, which is all about sharing mobility. You have sharing cars, so the ones that you can rent within the city, drive for 5, 7, or 10 minutes, pick it up from one place and leave in another. We have sharing bicycles, which works in the same way. We have sharing scooters, and a few other very new sources that are appearing or will appear very fast. When you think about that division of different transportation types, with each of them, we have some possibilities and we have some challenges which are connected with them. Next, there is always a case about transportation and public transport. How does it work? What are the challenges? And why most of the cities prefer and are saying, yes, majority of our budget will go on public transportation. New York City, London, these are the cities which are saying there's no sense to invest majority of the sources in other ways than public transportation. But to be honest, that's very true. We have no alternative. But sometimes we have the situations like in the presented movie, in which you can see that that's the movie from Tokyo, that it might be super crowded. And then we should work on making it, of course, more effective, more friendly for the passengers. But in some cases, we also have to think what can be included or what can be added to public transport. Not to replace them, because we have no other way to replace it, but we should take a look on what can add a value to that. But this public transportation, I think, is it shouldn't be popular just because it's cheap. If you will take a look on the pictures that you can see on your screen, you have three quite well-known people, and the pictures which were taken in public transportation in New York City and in London, in the train and in the metro. And in there, you can realize that they're not using this transportation system because it's cheap. They use it because it's fast, it's reliable, and it's at least partly comfortable. And these are the sources and these are the areas which we should mostly concentrate on while thinking about development of the public transport. Another very important aspect is everything about the integration. Because it's not the case to have very effective public transport, but for the people who live out of the city, they should have a place in which they can join this transportation system. It should be possible to go by bike, to go by electric scooter or to go by bus and then switch it to the tram or train. To make that system working, it is important to integrate different types of transportation in the city. If I'm a tourist and going into a new place, I might have even no idea which operators of electric scooters are in there, which applications should I have, and where I can switch a train to a scooter. If it's not integrated in one place, in one platform, it strongly limits the opportunity to use all of them. That's an ideal word, but practically it happens rarely that these sources are integrated. Hundreds of reasons, mostly the fact that the private companies that are operating them, they don't really want to be integrated. Because if you have, for example, 6 operators of electric scooters and you integrate them in one platform, it starts to look like the only advantage and the only way in which you can attract customers is a price that you will use in there. And they currently have their loyal customers with their applications, and that's also a huge competitive advantage. In most of the cities, it's hard to force them. You need to have legal regulations. But we have some examples of the cities in which this integration works. Most well known is WIM in Helsinki, in Finland, in which they implemented the way that you can use with one fare public transportation, you can use shared scooters, you can even use taxis in there. The results, they are not as optimistic as everyone thought, but they presented that's the right way to move on, and that's the only direction that you can use. But as I've mentioned before, it requires not only the willingness of the cities to do that, but it requires the fact that the cities has the power to make it possible and to make it appear. But that's for sure the direction that in the coming time will be the most popular one. When thinking about transportation in general, we should also remember there are some concepts in the way how the cities are built. And in here, 2 are most popular these days. It's everything about 15-minute city. So the city in which, around the place in which you live, within that 15 minutes time, without using the car, it's possible to cover all the needs, daily needs of your life, like school, shopping. It means that you should plan the city in the way that it does not require long distance travel within the city. So while you're limiting that, you have more time and you can use it and, for example, do it while walking in, let's say, the shortest possible way to describe the concept. And then we have another concept, which is transit-oriented development, in which you build the city using the key transportation points, for example, a railway line. And then around the railway stations, you start building these much higher, bigger apartments so that people in there, they have short way, which makes it possible, for example, to walk to the train station, jump in there, and using that way of transportation to move into the other places, which all in all means the way of moving in the city is better organized, and as a final result, it's shorter and requires less usage of individual cars. We have 4 other concepts as well, but we should remember that transportation is a key area to make the city working effective. And with all the areas like electric scooters, like autonomous mobility, or pedestrians, all of them should be covered when we think about smart cities, because even pedestrians, so walking, that's one of the key areas of what the smart city is.